Okay, welcome back. I've hit a point where our tactics change, and that is when you get to a depth in the reduction of the size of the stem where the teeth of a file could, if you get one of those parallel sets of grooves going, you've done it from time to time, I'm sure, where the file kind of skids and then it picks up its own track and begins to dig it deeper and it ends up looking like bear claws or something. Okay, if that gets too far in there, they won't go away by the time you've arrived at your final dimension. So when you get to about the spitting distance of where a file could do you damage, then it's time to shift to sandpaper. And before I forget to mention, stay away from this little spot right here. Within about an inch of that, you'll clean that up at the very end. It's treacherous up there. There's so little material that one slip and you've got a little scoop out of that and you're SOL. Also, stay away from the edges for the time being. That's the very delicate feathery edges, and this top guy here are leave them to the very last. And let's see here. Yeah, at this point, there's two things that I will do. One is I did a kind of a sample run here. Take a file like well, first of all, you need to measure the thickness of your behind the button zone here, which is we're at about 222, and we're shooting for 155-ish before we're done, so we got a lot to go. And the way to do that on something like this, so that you've got the correct dimension at this end, you don't want to go just sanding away and then discovering you get what you get. You want to have a target to shoot for. So count your strokes. Same number on each side. And check your thickness. And in this case, it was about 222. And now we're down to, didn't go down much at all. Just a few thousandths. But anyway, that's the technique. And then use your sanding sticks to keep on shrinking this thing. And what I've used for many years are little homemade widgets. I'll use a piece of foam and glue some cloth back sandpaper to them, and they're kind of like a sanding rasp or something. Very lightweight, much easier to use than files and stuff, in the sense that you can go both directions with, you can be frantic about it and it doesn't really matter. And if you don't have such a thing or don't want to mess with it, I would recommend that you, here's the alternative for anybody who wants to do more of a DIY thing, do it yourself. Well, I seem to have dropped what I was looking for, so I'll take another one. Yeah, these sanding boards that are available in drugstores, I believe they're marketed for what do you call it, fingernail work, in beauty supply places carry them. And then make cut some pieces of sandpaper using a nasty old pair of scissors, and do this. And you can start with something that's truly aggressive here. I believe this is 100 or 120 grit, and then go to town. And now you're going to say, wait a minute, George, you're back doing what you told us not to do, which is be concerned about dwell time. Well, at this point, you can't get away from it to some extent, so you have to accommodate that in the amount of time that you hover over certain areas. And it's much easier to explain or to demonstrate than to explain. So I'll just scrub away on this for a minute, and you can see how I do it and get an idea of the rhythm of how much to put up here in the corners and how much here on the flats, and then what to do when you encounter something that's not quite flat. All right, I'll just do it and stop talking here. Okay, so you do like 4 units of time up in here, and then maybe 1.5 here and half here. It's surprisingly fast to work, to grind away on thin areas of vulcanite, and surprisingly tedious to go over the wide areas. So once you've done had an attack there, you've gone through it, then take your block or your index card or whatever, and see where you might have a high spot. And I've got one right smack in the middle, which is kind of where I like to see them. It's better than having a sagged area. And then just go straight after it, side to side. And then get the scratches all parallel again and see what you got. And I took that down about 2/3 of the distance that I needed to go. So that's the routine, and what I will keep on doing with the tools that I've shown you. Keep on chopping away at the button, or the bite zone rather, behind the button to get it lowered. Now count your strokes so that you get an equal distance, equal thickness on both sides. And then using like somewhere around 100, 120 grit paper, just start going after these flats. Don't worry so much about the guy here in the middle. That is trickier to do, and just kind of make sure it doesn't fall too far behind, but don't worry about it too much for the time being. Absolutely stay away from this, and don't worry about final width and the edges here yet. That it's premature. If you were to go after those and hit your finished dimensions and then nicked them just one time in one place, bam, you're screwed. So anyway, that's it. I'm going to shut off the camera, continue doing this, and turn it back on at the next step, or the next change in strategy. We'll put it that way.